Hello and welcome to episode 178 of the Crate and Crowbar. It is the 28th of February, 2017. My name is Chris Thurston and tonight I'm joined by Tom Senior.
Hello.
Hello, Tom.
Hi.
Hi.
It's just us two.
It's just us two, because everyone else has vanished.
Having fantastic adventure times over the pond.
Who knows what they're doing? Unimaginable fun, I imagine. At GDC, which I only understand as a kind of, an eternal party where everyone you like is there. A bit like dying or the end of It's a Wonderful Life, or both.
I went there once and it was amazing. It really was brilliant.
I've never been, and maybe I will never go. We'll find out. Maybe I will. I don't know.
Yeah.
So we have both got some pod news, then there is some personal news, and then there is some more pod news.
The pod news sandwich.
And so, we were creating the news this week, which is probably bad form, but, and also I don't want to worry people when I say that we have personal news and pod news, because literally every other time that has happened, it has meant someone leaving the country. That isn't happening. So the Chris and Tom news is that this week we put up the first episode of Miniatures Monthly at the Crate and Crowbar, which is our name for the sort of miniatures and hobby gaming podcast that you and I are doing, Tom.
Indeed.
Every month from now on. We actually recorded the episode a little while ago, and we were both, for one thing, both incredibly busy with the PC Gamer Weekender, but then we wanted to kind of make sure that we were happy with it and do some edits and things. We put out the 2-hour pilot episode, which is available on crateandcrowbar.com now and via its own feed, which you'll find on the Crate and Crowbar. Should be on the front page, easy to find. Be right underneath this episode, in fact. And in it we discuss kind of how we both got back into hobby games and what we've got out of them that maybe sits separately to what we've been getting out of video games over the last couple of years, and talk about Age of Sigmar and particularly the new Warhammer that we both play. And yeah, it's very much a work in progress. I don't know about you, I find it a little bit weird given that we've done this almost 180 times.
Yeah.
It was strange how strange it was to do a new thing.
It's because we're both we've both been doing that Warhammer stuff for about a year, but we're still and we were both played as youngsters, but we're still kind of not as steeped in that world as we are with games, which we've just lived as professionals.
Yeah, I feel like I can talk a lot of bollocks in games and pretend that it holds some weight simply because I've worked in at least some part of the industry for some amount of time.
Yeah.
The miniature stuff is stuff that we're entering into purely as fans and players, and that is a very different vibe. Hopefully people who are interested in that kind of thing will enjoy the podcast. We are open to questions and suggestions and how people would like it to go. I set up an email address for it, which is miniatures@crateandcrowbar.com. So you can email that to get in touch about that specific podcast after you've listened to it. It's very likely that miniatures aren't like computer games. We can't kind of sample 6 different miniatures games in a week and then get back to you with kind of our feelings on each one based on an hour. You're talking about hundreds and thousands of hours of investment in games and settings. So it's very likely that podcast will zoom in heavily on Age of Sigmar because it's the thing you and I have in common, and branch out occasionally maybe to touch on things like X-Wing. But I'm genuinely personally a little bit afraid that X-Wing could turn into the Dota of the miniatures podcast, as the thing I care about a lot that no one else in the room really, invests in at the same.
We'll see how it goes and see what people like. I mean, there's every opportunity to kind of spin out X-Wing stuff into one-offs or tournament reports and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
so there's all sorts of things we could do with it. But feedback is amazing if you've got any, because that's what really helps us to make it better.
Yeah, indeed. And the other thing is that it will be a focus on miniatures and that kind of hobby gaming rather than broader tabletop. We have some other thoughts about that. But I think one thing we found when we were recording it, not to make the entire opening of this podcast just about the miniatures pod, but was, I think the thing you and I both feel most confident talking about is painting, which is something specific and I think interesting about this side of the hobby, or side of hobbies in general, rather than hardcore strategy game design or that kind of thing. So it might lean in that direction, but we're feeling it out. We have an email address for it. As I said, let us know what you like and don't like. And hopefully it's cool that finally Crate and Crowbar is more than just one pod, right? We're going at this new thing.
And that's also with great help from our Patreon backers who allow us to do all of this stuff and keep these podcasts coming. Yeah,
indeed. So this is the first manifestation of what we've been able to do with the Patreon, which is patreon.com/Crate and Crowbar if you're interested in that. And indeed, we're coming to the end of the first month that we've actually been running the Patreon again. So we kind of got a sense now for how we can scope things out. Not to confirm things yet in solid top forms, because we have learned our lessons about that, from previous special pods that may or may not have happened. But we do have some further plans, particularly so if tabletop wargaming and painting tiny men isn't your bag, we have some thoughts with regards to some further video stuff we could do, because we know people enjoyed that in the past, and also some tabletop role-playing stuff we might be able to do, because I love tabletop pen and paper role-playing very much. Yeah. It doesn't fit within the remit of a chat about tabletop games in the way that the Miniatures podcast covers, so that might be its own thing, and that plan is going to kick into motion. So that is the state of that stuff, and that all kind of ties into what's coming next, because the other cool thing that is happening at the end of this month, as you listen to this, the end of this month, so the end of March, is we are going to do the first live Crate and Crowbar thing. And when I say we, I mean, and I can confirm, Pip and Graham are going to be heading this up, because this will be at Rezzed, which is Gamer Network's, I think it's annual. I get confused with EGX sometimes. Yeah. They do multiple events, but Rezzed I think is annual. Gaming event with a focus on PC and indie and that kind of thing at Tobacco Docks in London. And I think this year it's the 30th of March to the 1st of April. We are going to be doing something on the Friday night, or Friday, late Friday in the afternoon. So I think it's 4:30 on Friday as our slot, but there will be an announcement with the confirmed details of that. We've done sort of little ad hoc community meetups and things at the PC Gamer Weekender, 2 years running now, but we will have, something planned around that. So if you're going to Rezzed already and you listen to the Crate and Crowbar, cool. We'll be doing a thing and you can come along. If you aren't planning to go to Rezzed, but you can get to London or whatever, you fancy coming down, then that's a thing we will be doing. And it will very likely be our first live podcast, which is an interesting thought. I don't know if they will let us drink.
They kind of have to, don't they?
Do they? I don't think they have
say
to.
No.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Licensing laws might say no, but we can have a lot of fizzy pop and talk about Dota or something. I don't know. I don't make any promises. But yeah, so that will definitely be, Pip and Graham, plus guests. It'd be lovely to have Graham back. Yeah. You can, meet him. He's real. But we'll see, who else is able to sort of, participate. And that brings me on to, the personal news part of the extended Crate and Crowbar news section, which is that, this week, and so today, if you're listening to this the day we put this out, is my final days at PC Gamer after 5.5 years. I am going freelance. I resigned. And so, in a positive way to move on and do broader projects and write more broadly. The good news about this is I am not changing career, in order to move to Sweden or Jersey or bugger off to Seattle. This will actually give me more time for things like the Crate and Crowbar and its various spin-off projects, which answers one of the questions we had hanging over us, which was how can 3 people with pretty time-consuming full-time jobs branch out into a little podcast network, and that's how.
Did you resign spectacularly, Chris? Was there any
I sent
drama?
Quite a polite email.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, it wasn't
quite reasonable.
Yeah, no. I thought about it a bit, probably not enough, and then I sent a polite email. Yeah, and that's not a surprise necessarily. If people follow me on Twitter, they probably know that's happening. But that's what's happening basically. Yeah. Is we are shuffling things up, we're doing new things. So
really exciting, I think. Really exciting times.
Yeah. I think it's some of the stuff that we would like to have done a while ago, actually. Yeah, but circumstances just never quite came together, and they finally have. So that's really cool. So the dates for Rezzed, once again, are 30th of March to the 1st of April, and our appearance will be on Friday the 31st of March. As far as I'm aware. And like I say, hopefully by the time this goes up, there will be Rezzed themselves will have made an announcement that I can link you to. But yeah, definitely consider that, because it should be fun. Yeah. And, who knows, if you were unemployed by then, I might just go along. Who knows?
Who can say?
So we should talk about what we've been playing. That's what we do.
Absolutely.
It is.
Would you like to start with the shooting game or the thinky game?
I'd like to briefly start with the shooty game.
Yeah, let's do
because
that.
I think we both have a lot to say about the thinky game. Yeah, because I mean, I had a little shooty break after quite a thinky time.
Right.
Because actually after 2 successive episodes, which is one of the reasons I won't dwell on it too much, I started playing Sniper Elite 4. On first your recommendation and then last week Alex Wiltshires. And I don't have a lot to add to the kind of, it's testicle popping good, which is
It does feel good, doesn't it?
It does feel good.
Yeah.
But actually I was quite, I've been really digging it. And so I knew it was going to be like a marksmanship game and like a stealth game. But even though it's got these like big open worlds, you have targets in a big open world and stuff, it doesn't really remind me of Hitman or Far Cry. Far Cry's closer-ish, but it's not like just outposts. It's like each mission has a structure, right? Each mission has...
Yeah, I think those maps are kind of chunked into mini objectives from what I've played so far. I've only played the first mission and a half though.
Yeah, I've done 3 now. It's not simply like, okay, it's a marksmanship game with gory fatalities, which is a thing. And it's not simply that it's like a freeform assassination game. The thing it actually reminds me of, weirdly, is Commandos.
Oh yeah.
You know, the old isometric or top-down
Yeah.
kind of squad tactics game.
Really hard game, yeah.
A very hard game. So this is obviously gentler than that because partly you don't have to manage multiple people and also you don't have, you got direct control over a single character in the third person and also you can quick load. It's similarly lethal actually. You get shot at, you die.
Yeah.
There's something about the way you approach these little sort of pockets of World War II, fortifications and people walking around and case out your own approach to it, partly with the sniper rifle, which is your kind of primary tool, but also with trip mines and explosives and throwing rocks to distract guards and things. That feels more sort of squad tacticsy in a weird way. I don't know if that is a dumb thing to say for a game where you control one man. I guess what I mean is it feels like the opponent you're up against is like behaves as a squad, like in quite a believable way. Like the AI is like really localized. It's not like map wide where you kill one person and it spreads everywhere. The way information is disseminated within these little groups of German soldiers is quite localized to like their checkpoint or their little base or something like that. And it spreads relatively realistically if you make a lot of noise. But when you start to manipulate the AI, they behave in a way that feels like you could also engage with those systems with a squad of soldiers and it would work just as well. I guess that's what I mean.
It kind of Brothers in Arms was a great squad shooter. But it played very differently, but it was about kind of controlling space and pinning and flanking and stuff. Whereas I think maybe this is much more free form. Maybe it's the fact that with the tools you have available, particularly the sniper rifle, you just have a lot of control over a very wide area, even as an individual.
Yeah.
Perhaps to the extent that you would expect to have as a squad. And the sniper rifle essentially lets you be in many different places at once because you can shoot off a truck and it will go up like miles away, and then you could see men running towards it, and essentially you might as well have ordered a second dude to go and put a bomb on it. So maybe it's that
I think that's exactly right, actually. I think that was, and the truck thing would be the example I would use. Like, I think a lot of stealth games, even excellent stealth games that I love, like Dishonored, if like a lot of your, I don't know if this is a bit of a wanky designy point, but like a lot of your power as a player is localized around you. And even if you do something that affects an enemy a long way away, like shoot them with a gun or whatever, like all of that work ultimately drags attention back towards you, right? So the more spotted you become, kind of the worse it gets for you, because eventually that eye is going to be directed towards you. Whereas, like, obviously if you fire a gun in Sniper Elite, people are going to look at you. But if you mask your shot using the ambient sound that is in every level, or use suppressed rounds or whatever it is you do to mask it, or simply find another way of achieving whatever distraction you want to do, the AI behaves realistically as if the threat actually is coming from the direction that you've tricked them into coming from. And I haven't seen too many games that get that quite as right, where like sometimes you really want like a big loud thing to happen, but in the wrong direction. Like not a lot of stealth games work that way. Like the moment the fucking bomb goes off is the moment the stealth ends. Whereas here it can actually set up like a whole chain of melee takedowns because suddenly you have an entire checkpoint full of dudes just looking the wrong way.
The only other game I can think of that has done it well in recent times is Metal Gear Solid 5, where that's just as a tactic I use repeatedly. Again, that is a game about having huge amounts of control over a wide amount of space, particularly because you have a companion, and if it's, you know, quiet or someone, they can do a lot.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think maybe MGS5, what MGS5 doesn't have, I think, is, or at least most of MGS5, which is an excellent game, what it doesn't have is like objectives that are crafted into the environment in quite the way that Sniper Elite does them. Like, I think the third level of Sniper Elite is the one where it kind of came alive for me a bit.
Right.
So the way that level is shaped, that's the one Alex was talking about on the podcast last week with the railway gun on a viaduct.
Okay.
So this huge gun in the distance that you can see in the and it fires every like 10, 20 seconds.
It gives you your
and that's your
sniper,
mass shot.
yeah.
But it's a massive level, and it's basically a circle with the place you start that you can do a lap of to do all the objectives. And whichever way around you choose to go is completely up to you. And the level unfolds differently based on the route you choose. And you can do a windy route if you want, but it's a big bowl, basically, like a big bowl-shaped valley. And the viaduct is at the far end from where you start, like 600 meters away. And, you know, you have to kind of start and return to the plot place you are. And there's a sort of, like, finding your own, one, it really does feel like you're finding your own path through that, challenge, like through that particular landscape and determining how it all goes. But secondly, there's a really cool, degree to which you set your own challenges and can not game it a bit, but you can like do things that, set you up for success, but like miles ahead. And so basically, like, you start the level on this little platform and you climb down into the level proper, and you can go back up there at the end. But I just sat there at the start and thought, oh, right, well, I can see that 600 meters away, there are dudes guarding the gun, which is the final thing you have to do. You have to destroy it. I'm going to see if I can take them all out from here. Like, I'm so far away that masking my shots isn't really a concern. I'm 600 meters away. And like, they have a sniper up there and, you know, a bunch of other things. And it was this really fun challenge of like, can I take them all out without missing and without, without sort of drawing attention anywhere closer to me? And that was watching the AI kind of panic because you're so far away, they can't see you.
Just don't know what's going on.
Yeah. And they can't, you know.
That's really satisfying.
Yeah, it's great. And then when you finally get there, like probably an hour later, and you're finding the bodies of the dudes you killed right at the start of the mission as a sniper, it's great. And the way it's not really a spoiler for the mission. The way you destroy the viaduct is you place an explosive on the bridge support underneath it. But you have to shoot that explosive because you can't put a timer on it because you couldn't get out of the way in time. So you have to, so I waited until I'd done everything else on the level and then just returned to that gantry at the beginning of the level and fired this one, 650 meter shot across the entire level.
That's awesome.
And I chose to do that. Like, the game didn't make me do that. I was just decided I was going to kind of style it out. There's like another objective to blow up an ammo cache and another objective to blow up an armored car. And the armored car is driving up a road that leads past the ammo cache and back around again. The ammo cache is one of the things where you set a timer on an explosive and then you have to just run away and then it blows up. When it blows up, that's obviously going to alert the guards. So it's up to you if you clear out that area in another way, sniping or melee or whatever. I didn't clear out that area. I cleared enough to get to the explosives. I went out to the road, and on a particular bend in the road, I laid some mines and some TNT and just set up a little trap for the armored car. To blow its tracks off. And then I gamed it a little bit because you can see on the map where the armored car is. And I sort of guessed, I waited until the armored car was what I thought was about 10 seconds from the trap I'd laid, and then activated the timer on the ammo dump and just sort of started sprinting out of the level just because this looks cool, right? And some Germans go like, hey, look at that guy. And I start to run out, and then the ammo dump goes up and this kind of huge explosion at the exact same time that the armored car goes over the thing, and its tracks get blown off. So there's sort of two explosions in two different places at once. And that, the AI is sort of has a load of different things to deal with. And that sound is dynamic and it covers different things. Covers me sprinting. And then I saw the armored car hadn't been fully destroyed by this, hadn't killed the crew. So I pulled out a flare gun, which is something I took out off a spotter, a German spotter, which is an enemy type introduced in that mission, and fired an artillery flare, like a German artillery flare, underneath the armored car, and then just kept running, and then you just hear this kind of whiz of shells as the Germans then blow up their own armored car. And I felt like a fucking boss, because the timing came off. And I didn't need to do it that way, but I'm genuinely impressed by it. That's a fun thing to to engineer in your own speed.
It's really cool. It makes me think actually that the levels are so large, it's tempting to describe it as open world, but I think that it highlights what's great about a designed level, even though it's very large, as opposed to, for example, Metal Gear Solid 5, I don't feel really gained very much for being open world. If Metal Gear Solid 5 had been like separate, large designed environments with those kind of opportunities built in, it might have been a much more exciting game. It's a great game, obviously, but I increasingly think that open worlds aren't easy, but just because you can do an open world with modern technology doesn't mean it's necessarily that very good for the design aims of the particular experience you're trying to create. So I increasingly worry about, for example, very interested in playing Mass Effect Andromeda, where technologically we're capable of creating huge environments now, but will that serve the story that game is trying to tell?
Yeah.
And, you know, I think about this about The Witcher as well, where my favourite part of The Witcher is Toussaint, which is, it's still an open world area, but it's a much more manageable, small kind of curated area than a lot of the main sprawling main game areas. So I think maybe some restraint on the part of designers in not just saying, this is huge, look, that mountain, you can go over there, but saying, we're going to create a large area, but it's going to be actually, there's going to design intent behind it, and this level's going to do something that the next level won't do.
I think Sniper Elite is an interesting example in that case because its levels are massive.
Yeah.
Like the first one is big, but then you get surprised by how big it actually gets. The second level is quite different because it's quite urban, for the most part, and changes how you approach it. It feels not linear, but like approached in a super weird way. But like, you know, they use cliffs and things to limit where you can go. The third one is the one that felt like, fuck, this is huge. And it has like 7 different objectives, which is each 10, 15 minutes of doing stuff to crack, depending on how you do it. You know, it felt like a mini open world in a way. But because, like, if I go and crack an outpost in Far Cry, I'm maybe completing 2% of that game.
Right.
In terms of my perception of it, right? It's a sort of drop in the ocean. Whereas, because this might be 7 things in a big level, each one of them feels like a little significant self-contained challenge. It is repetitive. I think that's definitely an issue with this, like any open world game. Sure. But I found, like, I don't do those levels in a single sitting. I load up my save, and I'll do one of those things, or 2 of those things, or see if I can do 2 of them at the same time, or whatever it is. And then I switch it off with the kind of satisfied feeling of like, I've just solved like a big chunk of this, like 20% of that level's been struck off, or 30%. And that is a little bit more, you feel like you're making more progress, while still getting the satisfaction of like happening upon things in an open world, which is what an open world should offer. But that's possible because it's a big designed space. Well, an open world is a big designed space. It's a big level, but a small open world.
You'd call them levels. I think that's it, because they have their own identity. And when you move between levels, it gets to reset the kind of aesthetic and, you know, fantasy of the area. And that's the thing that open worlds struggle to do without appearing to be incredibly contrived. So, you know, wandering from the desert bit into the lava bit into the ice bit, you know, that's a real problem for open worlds. Whereas having very large separated areas lets you target different aspects of the fantasy you're trying to create in a way that's far less jarring.
So, I mean, I'm surprised to come away. I mean, I'm surprised, honestly, that we've spoken about Sniper Elite on 3 successive podcasts now. But we've gotten quite far away from Nazi testicles
we have.
Exploding.
So fundamisally, that is a good part of the game.
You know, I haven't shot a Nazi in the balls yet. I haven't even seen it.
I accidentally did.
Right.
It went through at the hip because I misjudged.
I shot a Nazi very clearly right up the arse, like right up his bum, because he was climbing over a wall at the time, and I kind of panic snap fired a fucking Winchester round right up his bum, and it doesn't have a slow-mo cinematic animation for this.
You've got to leave features out for sequels. I think that's the thing.
It definitely picks and chooses what shot it's going to cinematically recreate. and a doubled over Nazi taking a round up the arse is not one of the things they chose to lavish with that kind of attention.
I'm sure they've got more DLC planned.
Indeed, yeah. You can shoot Hitler. But can you shoot him up the bum?
In the anus.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the next level.
So, you know, it highs and lows, but I was like, I picked it up on a whim, having, you know, and I've really enjoyed it. And I think that's a thing to say in what is rapidly becoming an incredibly competitive opening to the year for your time.
Holy crap. Yeah.
And that, I think, brings us on to the Thinky game.
It's the Thinky Talky Ready game.
So came out this week. Torment Tides of Numenera, which is the spiritual successor to Planescape Torment. I reviewed it for PC Gamer. I played it pre-release. I've just not been able to talk about it for like 3 weeks. So that's nice to finally be able to talk about it. But you've been playing it as well, Tom, and come at it completely fresh. Like you didn't play any of the previous alphas, no prior.
Yeah, I had nothing. Also, I have no familiarity with, I've only played like an hour of Planescape Torment, and I'm not familiar at all with the Numenera setting.
So opposite angles. Yeah. And I was definitely interested, I am definitely interested to hear what your kind of first impressions of it have been and kind of like how it's sort of shaped out for you.
Yeah, because you've GM'd Numenera campaigns, Chris.
I mean, I've got them right there. I've got like 6 different Numenera core books on that shelf. So
you obviously came into it with this like very kind of storied knowledge of how that world plays out. And what's kind of amazing about that world is that it's really super nuts. There's a load of kind of crazy out there concepts. It's a very interesting, collision of science fiction and fantasy. More science fiction really, but you know, kind of, there's a load of kind of spiritual themes like woven into it and concepts of magic. Essentially, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, you know far better than me, like you enter the 9th world.
Yep.
After a period of just enormous societal booms and busts, various empires and things have risen and fallen, and you're now existing on the detritus of all those many, thousands of civilizations, perhaps.
So even though it's one of the weirdest settings in terms of the amount of stuff it combines, it's Earth, a billion years in the future, and you know, like eagle-eyed viewers will notice that Earth probably should still be around a billion years in the future, and that is one of the many mysteries that sort of surrounds this setting, where the society in it is approximately medieval, really, in some ways. Or not medieval, but like Dungeons and Dragons medieval, right? Like, so fantasy people, but, you know, with a kind of, not an advanced society necessarily, but everywhere they look, there is a billion years worth of human and other technological progress. They just don't understand it.
And my first mistake about the setting, which and many people will assume this, I think, about the name, is that Numenera is the name of the place, whereas Numenera is like almost like the word ephemer, like it's just the stuff of those past civilizations. Like it's just the menagerie of all those objects.
Any sort of ancient device.
And no one knows what they do, but there are kind of observable effects. Like some of them will actually, some of them are just kind of strange, weird puzzle boxes, and it could be like a child's toy from thousands of years ago that doesn't do anything, but something else might let you set things on fire, or it might be a living metal that fuses itself to your skull and then becomes part of you that you can control. Like, you just don't know what's going on, and you're thrust into this world as a kind of newly sleeved person, a soul who's been thrust into a body, an unfamiliar body, falling out of the sky, crashing down into this place. And like Planescape Torment, the fantasy is incredibly good at supporting a video game adventure, because the amnesia stuff and the dying and being reborn and coming back into the game over and over again is all catered to very, very well by the fiction.
It's a really, so this is the stuff that is new, that isn't taken from the pen and paper game, but it's a really good take on amnesia. Like, when you say it's kind of a game about someone who doesn't know who they are, that feels like the oldest RPG cliche in the universe. But it's kind of about that to an extent. Like so you are not, your character who's called the Last Cast Off is not, they didn't forget. They genuinely don't know, because they are a consciousness. You are a consciousness that has, been kind of called into being, to replace a consciousness that has fled your body. This is not a spoiler. This is first hour of the game stuff, and I don't think we'll say too much that spreads beyond that necessarily, if you're worried. You know, you're a product of a person called the Changing God, who was a human being that long ago found a way to transfer their consciousness into a new body, and they've used this over eons basically to prolong their life indefinitely. But a quirk of fate or science or magic or whatever it is in the Ninth World says that each of these bodies, when they're discarded, gains a personality. They don't just become inert kind of soulless things. Like a soul just kind of forms to fill the space. And yours is the soul that has formed to fill this most recent space. So you have freedom, and a substantial amount of freedom, to determine who that person is. And they genuinely are just coming into being. However, they have access to the memories of things their body did previously. And beyond that, memories that like the Changing God has access to.
And Changing God is the being that has evacuated your body before you were formed. Yeah.
And so it's not amnesia, because they're not your memories. You access the memories of the person who previously occupied your body.
You're a tourist in those experiences.
Yeah. And, and that idea is one of the earliest ideas, that it flexes in a bunch of different ways. Like, what does it mean to meet somebody who knew you, thinks you're the person they knew, and hated you, or to discover that what you were capable of last time you were in this body, to discover that you're not just entering the world, you are a blank slate, but your body isn't.
Yeah.
And people know kind of who you are, not who you are, but the Changing God isn't a secret. Cast-offs aren't a secret. Like, you're a known phenomena to everyone except yourself, which is a really interesting twist on the Chosen One thing that games traditionally do.
Yeah. And it's very kind of disempowering in a way. Though you have all these abilities, you are a nobody in this world, really, because you bear the tattoo of being a cast-off, so people recognize you as a cast-off. But there is enough room for you to claim that you just are still the Changing God. And in fact, this is in the first hour, you'll walk through the doors into the city, and there's a cult devoted to the Changing God. And you can totally go up to them and say, I am the current living host, I am the Changing God, and they will respond in kind. And you get to really, really mess with that idea, and mess with the people around you using that idea.
It's, so actually maybe to talk about, to return to the idea of a designed, detailed space as opposed to a hugely expansive one. Like, it's a big game, but it's not big in the way that people, as a isometric, like traditional old school RPG, it's not Pillars of Eternity big. It's not like Baldur's Gate 2 big, where like there's just a vast amount of stuff to do and a vast amount of systems to engage with. Like, it's not a sandbox RPG in the way that Pillars is, where if you want to make that game entirely about massaging party strategy for combat encounters, or creating your own custom band of heroes who, like Chris Livingston once did, only use bears, that's that kind of RPG. This is a much more specifically honed narrative experience. And as such, it doesn't like take place over like a vast territory. Like, if you played the early access version, or in any case, your first hours of the game are spent in a city called Sega's Cliffs, which is composed of about, like, in a super old school sense, 5 screens, 5 or 6.
Yeah. My God, the amount of ideas it packs into a screen is just astonishing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so good.
Like, and so first, if you did like a lap of it, it would take you like 5-10 minutes, and you'd be like, that's it, as if, you loaded up a Sniper Elite level expecting Far Cry, right? But what it manages to do is make like every fucking inch of those places actually matter, and to knit them together into like a spider web of decisions that affect each other. And I think that's probably that's where it went from being like, I was going to be sympathetic because I love the setting, right? And I'm into what they're trying to do. But that was the moment where I was like, this isn't just like a good RPG that I'm familiar with in a setting I happen to like, but actually notably different to how other RPGs do things.
Yeah, I mean, I spent 15 hours in the first 5 screens. Genuinely 15 hours.
Yeah.
And I don't want to kind of give away what really happens there, but just to give a few kind of loose concept, there's a bar full of psychics. There's a room where these strange ancient trees grow. Then people don't really understand them, but if you're near them, then you can only hear the voice of the person next to you. You go in there, people are trading political secrets because it's an amazing place for diplomacy and backstabbing to happen. And every screen has like multiple aspects of this, and your companions kind of interact with so many different NPCs and each other in so many different ways. And the quests, like me, you, Chris, and Andy Kelly on Beast Gamer have just been talking about our experiences in that first city, and things just can go in so many different directions depending on the person you are and the kind of the tidal affinities you kind of have as you go into that.
Yeah, so it's worth explaining the tides, because they're in the title, they're not part of the pen and paper game. So this is, in a very simplistic way, the best way to explain it is this is Tides of Numenera's version of a morality system. But it's very explicitly not a morality system. It is, there are these forces that are, there are forces in the world that are governed by not necessarily emotions, because emotion is kind of one of them, but like almost like aspects of the human psyche. So, and they're represented by colors. So the red tide is passion, which could be lust or it could be anger, any sort of form of sort of strong kind of passionate emotion. There's the blue tide, which is sort of wisdom, curiosity. There's like a philosophical element as well as like a psychological element. It's almost like, this is why it goes beyond simply good and bad or like angry or calm into like a mixture of aspects of the human psyche, but also aspects of kind of understanding what being conscious means. And if that sounds like a very arch way of putting it, and that puts you off, don't play this game.
Yeah, this game's all about that kind of stuff, yeah.
Because it's a lot of this, but very, very well written and really well executed. So, for example, the gold tide is sort of selflessness and compassion, but compassion specifically in the context of like giving of oneself. Angrily defending someone you love is probably more red than gold, even if you're...
That's the thing, these, you can express something using one of these tidal affinities, but depending on the context, you would more view them differently in moral terms.
And it's very good engineering scenarios about that. An interesting one is the indigo tide, which is sort of, it represents justice and equality, which you wouldn't think of as like psychological concepts, like, but actually you can make the argument that they are, that the notion of balance is a kind of human psychological need.
The sense of, there should be a greater level of fairness is a kind of philosophical reaching on the part of individuals.
And that is sometimes aligned with compassion and selflessness, which is gold, and sometimes directly opposed to it.
Yeah.
And that's a really interesting, like the notion of forgiveness is a gold idea, not a purple one, even though purple is about justice. So you have like different angles on what's right, folded up in these different, quite complicated tides. Like silver is the tide of sort of fame and regard. And you can do something that you think will be, my characters ended up very highly gold aligned, for a couple of decisions that I made. But there are times when I've kind of said the thing that I thought this is only going to increase my kind of gold affinity and said, so like, don't worry, get back guys. I'll handle this. Like I can do this. And suddenly silver is surging. And that's because the thing I've done is not really selfless so much as, well, it's selfless, but it's also like pointedly self-aggrandizing.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like as soon as like, pursuing selflessness gets over into actually, I might be the Messiah. That's when you start to tip over into silver. And none of these things are bad necessarily or good. It's just, and it's very good at engineering scenarios that make you challenge the way you've been approaching things. And also, having characters, I think there's a character you haven't met yet, but there was one character in particular who does it's just a beautifully written philosophical conversation. And she does an amazing job of putting you to the question a little bit when it comes to why are you doing the things you're doing. They're probably easy questions to answer if you're just a dickhead.
Right.
And that game gives you that freedom.
Yeah, for sure.
But like, I found it genuinely like thought provoking as a person who was not lazily role playing the kind of the chatty character who ultimately does well by everybody, but like I was sailing into every scenario in order to save everybody involved. And eventually I got to the point where someone put me to the question on that a bit. And that was genuinely just a great bit of writing.
I'm currently, sort of, I'm tideless in the sense that the game has put me into, it puts you into an affinity based on your responses in conversations. So it will kind of say, oh, you've gained a little bit of gold here or a little bit of silver there or blue. And I've currently been so scatological with my approach to this that I'm in between all the tides and therefore a person of nothing but perhaps everything.
Yeah. That's the good thing is being neutral is not, you're not neutral planet man, right? It just means you're kind of demonstrating lots of different human traits in different directions.
Yeah.
Because they're not ultimately like contradictory.
Yeah, that's true.
You can be angry and selfless. You can be selfless and, prideful. Like they can combine interesting ways. And those are used to inform a kind of basic level, like how characters treat you. They also have a much bigger role in the plot. And that's sort of just like a small part of it. Like it really gets it's a very reedy game.
Oh,
We
yeah.
do a lot of reading.
Yeah.
A lot of reading.
Which, I mean, the writing is fantastic. The only reason I think any of us would put up with it, if it's, you know,
Yeah.
if the writing wasn't up to snuff, it would just be a disaster, because the whole game is about reading huge amounts of text and conversation trees.
Yeah, every little trinket you pick up has not only a description, but might trigger a little adventure in your brain if you look at it.
Yeah, I think one of the things I love about the setting in this particular game is the way that it's so kind of obsessed with internal space. And I mean, your character's got a literal mind palace, pretty much, where your inner person is represented as a level that gains bits as you discover more about yourself. But also, just as you're kind of going around the place and examining things, a lot of these objects are about manipulating your mind and pulling you into different memories and different places. And it's one of those areas where a game about reading and interacting with text, like, genuinely pulls you in as a player in that way, if you understand. Like, as you're reading about this incredible kind of Myers-Briggs experience of being pulled into a crystal and seeing memories, you're also being drawn by the very, process of reading into your own inner self to realize that. And there's a sense that there's a flow to the game where you go into those spaces, and then when it spits you out again, you sort of pop back into the world, and it feels as though you have actually kind of gone somewhere and come back again. It's very, very good writing.
It is. I think you're right that it is a game about interior spaces. Like, when we talk about it having a small number of zones that it gets a lot out of, it really does make everything work, and it does a lot of it through text. Like, Tides of Numenera's weakness is probably its visuals and its art, right? Like, some of it is great. There are areas, particularly later in the game, that are amazing to look at.
Yeah.
And I think because they feature in some of the earliest art, I think they're probably the things that people are most inspired by. And there are areas that don't look great, really, and there are animations that are very stiff and I think the danger, I said this in my review, with any game that has this much reading and this many huge ideas that are, beyond the scope of presentation a lot of the time anyway, and that particularly is based on a very improvisational and very kind of literary pen and paper game, is it occasionally does fall into the trap of it tells you things that are amazing rather than showing you them.
Yeah.
And games do have an opportunity to show you things, right? That's the thing that is good about games.
That's true.
And it doesn't always live up to that. I think that's probably the root of my only problem with it, really. Like, I think it would be one of the best games ever if its presentation matched how good its ideas are.
Yeah.
But it feels like a very good use of an extremely talented writing team. In the same way that arguably Fallen London is as well, and Sun of the Sea, which I think is actually one of the other good comparisons with this.
For sure.
Because those are also games about just stories. This is much better because it is fundamentally a better game. And also because it is more focused. It's not trying to also be like an online role-playing game or trying to be a kind of roguelike kind of thing. It is just a story that you play through and where your choices branch out and do different things. How do you find the actual kind of the systems of it? Because it adapts the pen and paper role-playing system for the first time. And that pen and paper system is a rejection of Dungeons and Dragons. Really. And Dungeons & Dragons is like the basis of every other computer RPG ever made. Yeah. How did you find it in terms of...
So, yeah, to kind of briefly explain it, there are three kind of ability pools you have. And they reflect different aspects of your character. So Indigo, I believe, is that science and kind of persuasion.
So then, actually, the fact that it's Indigo is unrelated to the Indigo Tide.
Yes.
So it's might, intellect, and speed, which are red, purple, and yellow in the game. But they're just might, intellect, and speed.
So you got might, intellect, and speed, and obviously might is used in combat encounters. And you have each character has a certain number of pips for each value. And if you're trying to persuade someone, you'll be spending a certain number of points of intellect to increase the chance of persuading them. So if your character has a large pool of intellect, say like 10 points, you can spend 4 in one conversation to 100% persuade someone, and the next conversation you could spend it again, until you're depleted. And being depleted, it doesn't hurt you, which it does in the role-playing game.
Yeah, it's bad in the role-playing game.
But it does stop you from exploiting those opportunities in future until you either use an item that replenishes that pool or you go to sleep.
Yeah.
And move the game on to the next day. And there is actually a time thing going on in this game. Like if you sleep, quest can move on. That kind of puppy you left dangling on the edge of the well is going to have fallen in. that kind of stuff. If there are perilous situations that will involve, they will.
It's worth, if you play it, it's worth not only go in blind, but also go in having suspended some of your sense of game logic. Because I know that a few people have been caught a cropper by the fact that it pays attention. If you go to sleep and you left something important dangling, like, that's not a good idea. You shouldn't have gone to sleep.
Yeah.
Whereas you might think that's a kind of neutral action because it's a game, but it's not.
Many games, threaten you with imminent consequences and then, don't actually press you on that. The problem with this system for me was that it basically meant I had to go and have a nap all the time in order to play the game. Like, instinctively you game it, so you want to have your pool as full as possible at all times. So I'd end up just going to the inn every kind of 5 minutes, because you never know when you're going to get pulled into a long quest line, particularly if you can get sucked into an object and go into a memory and then actually have to make a lot of decisions using a lot of pool points. So I'd end up just going back to the inn to spend 20 shins to sleep constantly. And, that just felt like gaming it. It didn't feel like it mattered. Your characters, your companions, you can use their health pools as well, their attribute pools, but the strengths and weaknesses of their pools didn't matter either, because I felt ultimately, as long as I rested enough, they were all at max pools and I just had loads of, points. And it didn't create interesting decisions. It just created the annoyance of having to constantly refill the pools.
It fights some logic in that actually some quests, like, often failing one of those checks, like a persuasion check, because it's worth specifying that, like, it's not like each stat is used for different things, and each of them has combat and non-combat applications. Combat is completely optional.
Yeah.
Might, which is, it's might or speed might be like punching or stabbing, but they're also climbing and lifting and grabbing, and, there are a lot of reasons to want to do those things, outside of that context. The notion is that you should, the basic difficulty of the thing you're trying to do is set by the skills you already have. So if you're good at persuading, it's already higher chance of success. And then if you choose to spend the pools, that you're effectively risking, you're sacrificing some of your pools, to spend effort. It's called spending effort in the RPG as well. That's the idea. It's like, it's like my baseline chance of succeeding at this, if I'm not really trying, is 60%. But if I try, it's 80%. And that takes some of my sort of intellect away for a while. Not my actual, it takes some of my kind of, mental energy for the day.
Yeah.
I really love that system. I think it's really elegant. I think one of the problems is it's designed at a basic level. It's designed for a game where the pace is set by a GM, not by a player. Because the player's instinct is, I want to get to the end of the quest line now. I don't want to risk consequences if I go to sleep.
Yeah.
I want to finish this zone now before I go to sleep. Whereas, in the pen and paper game, a reactive GM can ensure that players only find themselves under pressure with their pools when it's interesting. So, because resting and stuff works slightly differently in the pen and paper game, but it's broadly the same idea, right? Is that you get exhausted for the day and you're not really capable of doing very much more. So maybe it makes sense to sleep or have a break or whatever, and then your character is refreshed for the next set of challenges. And if the players somehow burn through all their pools, the GM, and it's not going to be fun to throw something at them, the GM is the person who makes that decision. The next part of whatever the adventure is doesn't happen because there's a human being there kind of massaging it. Or maybe it's interesting that they then have to solve a problem, but they're all exhausted.
Yeah.
And that's part of the story. The issue is with this is it's the same system, but the player is the person determining what they want to try and do. So it maybe encourages you to game it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I don't know if it quite reconciles that. I don't think it's a deal breaking issue. It's a great game, but
no, it hasn't affected my enjoyment of the game, to be honest. It's just become a minor annoyance. I think that, it is about gaming it, but I'm not sure what the alternative would be for them. I mean, there has to be some sort of restriction on, you shouldn't be able to perform at your maximum capacity all the time. I think that the problem the game has is that it doesn't explain enough that failing those checks is as interesting often as succeeding at those checks.
Bless it, it tries.
It does try.
Like, it feels like you're never going to convince a game player.
No, that's the thing. All games are going to come with this preconceived idea of they want to win every encounter.
Yeah. So, I mean, I explain this with like a first minute spoiler, not really even a spoiler. The way it tries to introduce this is really nice. And it's a very elegant idea. The very first thing you do in the game that involves expending effort, when it teaches you to expend effort, is you need to move a big bowl under a drippy thing. I want to tell you the context of that. If you succeed, you move the big bowl under the drippy thing. And this, because space magic, lights up the room that you're in. If you fail that first check, which is just a might check to push a big bowl, your character cuts their hand and blood goes into the pool, along with the drippy thing. And this means that the room lights up red instead. And it changes one room in the game, for the duration that you're in it, at the very, very beginning of the game. And it is explicitly there and even tells you in a little tooltip. This is, it is there to demonstrate we are willing to run with the things that go wrong as well as the things that go right. There are times where you can die and you have to load a save, but there are also times where you can fail quite badly and it just takes you in a different direction. It does bottleneck. It doesn't quite match up to something they said very, very early on, which is that every death would be kind of factored in. I don't think they solved that problem. I think that was maybe too ambitious.
Yeah.
But they got a lot of the rest of the way. They got far closer than the rest of most other RPGs. Like, fucking up is just another part of the story. And so you have to go in almost with the discipline to say, I'm going to accept what happens. Like, when we've all been having those conversations about what happened to us in the first 10, 15 hours, we've all gotten to different places with it. All different things have happened. There are quest lines I didn't finish because I couldn't figure them out. That like Andy explained to me how to figure out.
Yeah.
But then I realized that like, oh man, I would love to have seen how that resolves. But also the thing it turns out you have to do is not something that I felt my character would do. So maybe that's something for another playthrough, right? Like I'm playing as a sort of quite a thoughtful character that's constantly looking for knowledge and trying to act selflessly. I've also played it as an asshole, really, like who has no qualms about killing people and just, and isn't interested in making friends and just wants to look after themselves, and it supports that fully. And neither of those approaches see everything, and neither of those approaches really kind of win. It's not like Mass Effect where like Paragon Shepard is going to get everything done perfectly.
Yeah.
Without sacrifice. It feels like everywhere I'm making choices that limit the scope of my particular playthrough, and that's what's good about it. But if you need to do everything perfectly and you want a quick load every time something goes wrong, you're going to get a skewed version of that game, I think.
Nonetheless, even if you are trying to game it and just kind of playing it instinctively, it is just such a great world and such a well-written adventure and such a kind of so much brilliant quest design in there that I think it is. If you like that sort of game, you absolutely it's a must.
Something that I would be interested in knowing from you is that whether or not you felt that it lacked kind of impetus, because one thing it's very short on relative to most other RPGs is a main quest with very clear objectives.
Yeah.
There is one, but it's very abstract to you in the way that a lot of the world is very abstract to you.
Yeah.
Like, like you got to stop something bad happening, but the parameters of that are not like everything in Numenera. It's highly it's like 16 different kind of mad sci-fi story prompts packed into one idea. So it doesn't have it doesn't open with like a clear villain that you have to chase through space, right? Like that's Mass Effect. Did you feel that at all? Because I know roughly where you are in the game, and I don't think you've even gotten to the bit where you find out what the story's about yet.
And to be honest, no, I've not minded it at all, which is unusual because, I like things to get to the point normally. But I think the kind of concepts it introduces you to, and I think it introduces you to the underlying concepts that world runs on incredibly well through just experiential quest stuff, and just kind of getting stuck into those little short stories has been absolutely fascinating. Especially it's because those environments were so dense. You can move across one screen, and it doesn't matter necessarily that you don't have a villain to chase. You've already kind of had your interest piqued by 3 or 4 different things. They're already like hooks all over the place just to drag you into little stories. And I think I've been pulled into the kind of minutiae of that in just the first 5 screens and followed that through just because the stories are so interesting, the world's so good. And I've not missed the grand villain or the big stakes at all. And I'm looking forward to them unveiling themselves. I've just got to the first new area, and that's a very different type of place to the first area as well. And I can't wait until that stuff's introduced, but unusually, I think it actually sustains itself really well.
That's one thing. I guess one last thing I really wanted to praise it for. Kind of touched on this earlier when it talked about kind of like we just did that. It's kind of all side quest in a way.
Yeah.
But something it does, and one of the ways in which it uses those smaller spaces so efficiently, and I wish every fucking game would do this, is it uses the same characters in multiple plot lines in intelligent ways. Like, talking about breaking out of traditional game logic, most games where you understand what a side quest is, whether that's The Witcher or Mass Effect or whatever, or even Pillars, you go into a city, you kind of itemize all the people, and all of the people in the city, all the NPCs are going to be, they're bonded by storylines that are, from one to another. But each of those pathways is like pretty linear. Like this person sends you to this person and they are looking for that person. You find that person and you go back to person A from person C. And person A, B, and C in that story will never interact with person X, Y, and Z in a different story. Like you kind of resolve that pattern until you kind of know what everyone's for, and you pick up maybe multiple quests on one way, but you never really like talk to the same people in different contexts, right? Once you've done someone's quest, they kind of say, "Thank you for finding my dog." Every time you talk to them for the rest of time, they stop, right? You delete them from kind of existence by finishing their stuff. And that's how like literally every fucking RPG works.
Yeah, absolutely.
Apart from Torment, where they smartly reuse characters. So, I'm deliberately cutting around spoilers, but I can give a very abstract explanation of this in that there's a group of orphans in Sagas Cliffs. There are kids around. And there are 3 or 4 quests that, sort of affect the lives of that group of kids in completely different ways. And there are parts of those quests that are totally unrelated to each other. And there are parts of those quests that are intricately related to each other. And often it's up to you to intuit the connections. And I know that sounds super vague, but what it means is that you get this kind of weird feeling of the game being far more organic than you expect an RPG to be when, you'll be told like, oh, this is actually, I'm making this up, so this isn't a spoiler. Oh, someone saw a little orphan kid running away from that fire. And the traditional game logic says you go looking for the orphan you haven't met yet, because that's the one that's going to be related to this quest line, rather than the orphan who is related to the last quest line.
Yeah.
In Torment, you go and talk to the orphans you already know. And the chances are they might have been involved. They might be the people you're looking for. However, because you already interacted with them in a different context, a very different context, maybe they needed to find some beans and you were a dickhead and you threw the beans in the sea. These are not things that happen in Torment Tides of Numenera. But suddenly you're not getting help in this other quest because you've got a reputation from the last quest you did that happened to touch upon their lives.
Sure, yeah.
And, and so it's almost like some people are the start and the ends of quests. Some people are the middle points of quests. And sometimes they're both in different contexts. And so you enter this sort of densely connected 6 screens, and kind of whichever node you choose to tug on first determines the start of your path through this maze of sort of choices and consequences. And that's why it ends up so different. Like when I went to play it for the second time, because I reviewed it on Xbox as well, I sort of ran in completely the opposite direction to the way I'd gone the first time and talked to someone completely different. And that changed loads because suddenly the people that know me as the dickhead who went and beat up that guy for no reason. That is one of the things about its design that feels so kind of rad to me. Like it's very few games use characters in that way because it makes them feel more like characters. Suddenly you find yourself like, oh, I need some help from a psychic. Who do I know? Rather than, are there any psychics I haven't spoken to because they'll be the ones that...
Yeah, and it'll be a named psychic. It'll be like, you need to speak to this particular guy, which means you have to go into this cave full of kobolds and then he will be in there. Rather than go to the place where the psychics are hanging out, getting wasted.
Yeah. And there's loads of instances of, like, I know that like Andy and I solved some problems in completely different ways, but beyond the traditional kind of logic of arsehole way, pragmatic way, Jesus way, which is the kind of RPG things. We just had different interpretations of how to handle stuff, and that just took us in different directions. And he did things I didn't even know you could do. Like,
I've got a story about some robot children. Not sure whether I won't say it.
No,
so I think it might spoil some stuff.
Yeah. I love that story though.
But we'll tell it in a few weeks, I think.
I think, out there in a few weeks. I don't know if it's such a dense game that I don't know if it supports a spoiler pod. Like, I thought about it, but like, there's so much to it that I don't want to spoil it for anybody.
Yeah.
But also, I feel like someone could even play it through and kind of not want stuff they didn't see spoiled for them.
Sure.
But like, I would like,
Yeah,
like
let's err on the side of caution for this one, I think.
Stay on the side of caution. If you feel stuck, or I tweeted this today, but I would reiterate it. I was, we got access to the final game quite early, and I had probably not a very different game, but like, I remember the experience that people recounted of playing Dark Souls for the first time as reviewers, when no one knew anything about it. No one knew who From Software were really, apart from some really hardcore fans of Japanese role-playing games. And there were no guides, and no one knew what the fuck they were doing. And so that was like, journalists talking to each other to try and help them through these challenges. And it was the ideal way to encounter the mystery of that game for the first time. Numenera is a totally different game because it's not a challenge in the same way. You're not going to need help in the same way. But one of the nice things about playing it in that context was there are no guides. There are no FAQs to consult, because you will get stuck. You will not know how to progress in a plot line. To the extent that I, at one point did think that some things had bugged out, but I hadn't thought about it the right way.
Right.
And what I would say is, there are going to be guides everywhere in only a couple of days, probably even by the time you listen to this. Don't use them.
Yeah.
Like, if you feel stuck, just do something else and persevere with the game in a different direction. Like, see where it takes you. Do what's logical to you. Don't, like, go find out, how do I win this quest?
It's because it's not a kind of RPG about being powerful in the same way that an Pillars of Eternity is, where you want good armor and good weapons and really efficient builds. It's just not about that at all. It really is a genuine role-playing game in that sense.
It is. It really is. Like, you have to want what it's offering, which is a sort of densely written, very sort of, philosophically ambitious story that wants you to role play it and wants you to engage with it seriously. Like, I know from running the pen and paper game that often pen and paper RPGs become slapstick because that's how people are. But this isn't a game that necessarily supports that. It's not funny. That's one thing it isn't reliable. True. There are good jokes in it. There are jokes in it. It's not all deadpan. It doesn't have like more the flying skull like the original Torment did.
Yeah.
To kind of offer a bit of levity. It is like everybody you meet is going to have something to tell you about fucking nanomachines, time, transfer of consciousness, the perils of knowing how causality works in your own particular case, whatever it is, right? Like everyone's going to have something to tell you about that. And you kind of got to be ready for that. But if that is what you are after, I think it's genuinely fucking
fantastic.
Great. Yeah. It's going to be great to have that sort of all wrapped up and then suddenly Mass Effect.
A very different experience.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm looking forward to kind of really rinsing this for all this hardcore stuff and then go and shoot some fucking aliens.
Yeah, honestly, I think I'm ready for some fucking like sexy, accessible Canadian space adventure time after this.
Yeah.
Cause I've had to use my brain a lot and it's time maybe for the heart, and my heart wants spaceships and
coming out of warp.
Birdman romance.
Yeah, fantastic.
But genuinely is like, I think the best thing about, Numenera, maybe to wrap up this discussion, is that it's genuinely like a great collection of sci-fi stories, like if it wasn't anything else, it's just this big bag of little story ideas that stick in your brain and you can continue to think about.
Sure.
What does it mean to be only the most recent occupant of your body? What does it mean that there are lives like yours happening everywhere, right? Like has any of it like leaked into real life for you at all? Like in terms of thinking about those ideas and because it's a game full of sort of believable people, but sort of unbelievable situations, trying to imagine what it would actually be like to be in those kinds of situations.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's as far as role playing goes, it's all about kind of, especially in that world where realities can bleed into one another and you're living multiple strands of multiple lives, entwined by memory.
Yeah, indeed. Like, knowing that your decisions are only like sort of one possible path and like a branching, not only just within the context of the story, but in the context of your kind of route through the game, right? Like, I don't know, it's an obvious thing in some ways, but it's a strange thing to be kind of confronted with the reality of it. Like, I'll put it this way, right? Like, we are recording episode 178 of The Crate and Crowbar, but somewhere there is a version of this timeline where Marsh didn't go to Sweden, or where Tom didn't bugger off to Valve, or where even just Pip didn't go away to DDC for a week, right?
Indeed, yeah.
Yeah. Like, or where this is a totally different episode of The Crate and Crowbar happening in a completely different context, with voices that we haven't heard from for ages, or, a completely different set of perspectives and, a better or worse recording equipment based on the, whether or not we did the Patreon or just happened to have the stuff. Like, it's, it kind of, I mean, who would even know what that would sound like?
Hello and welcome to a very special episode of The Crate and Crowbar. Special because we are in America and I'm here and Marsh is here.
Hello.
And Pip is also here.
Hello!
We're at GDC. GDC has not started yet, recording this on, I was supposed to say the date, 26th of February 2017.
Doesn't have a pod number necessarily, because we don't know if it's going to replace the pod.
Yeah.
So consider this a supplementary pod, special supplementary pod.
You are now entering the numberless void of pod space.
To which both Tom and I have been doomed since we left the pod.
We've been trying to get out ever since.
Just recording thoughts week after week. Don't know where to send them, don't know how to
Every
organise
Tuesday I
them.
drink a bottle of whiskey and I say my thoughts into my room, but
Thanks for
nothing comes of it.
listening, nobody. So sad. But we're back now. Not forever, but just for today.
Yes.
Yep.
It's nice. Sorry we don't have whiskey. That was an oversight on my part.
I'm kind of glad because I'm going to party later and then every other night is also a very alcohol-themed event. I managed to almost not drink last night, but I still did.
Almost.
Yeah. That's as far as I get.
Accidentally, walked into a whiskey and coke or something.
I ordered a cocktail that I thought there was like a non-alcoholic cocktail section and there was a sort of something between the non-alcoholic and the alcoholic cocktail sections, and I ordered that, and then it turned out to be a sort of like Mexican shandy that had mango and Corona in it.
Oh wow, that sounds really nice.
It's kind of nice. It tasted too much of Corona, and so you couldn't help thinking you're drinking a beer with something in it. Rather than a delicious fusion of all these flavours. And then also I had to drink... I didn't have to drink the first gin and tonic. That was voluntary. That was peer pressure. And the second gin and tonic I did have to drink because the person who was drinking it left.
That's the rules. You don't make the rules in the void.
Yeah.
That's just how it goes.
I'm imagining this Corona shandy thing as like, those, when you get a Sol or something in the UK and it's got like the lime sliver, it's got just a mango balanced on top and someone's like desperately trying to jam it in the neck of the bottle.
Cramming the mango in your Corona. It's a good pod title.
Anyway,
if we don't say
how are
anything
you
else
both?
I'm good. I've been at Valve, seeing a whole bunch of things that I can't possibly say anything about. So just to head that off at the pass. But I've been working on my game still, Heat Signature, and doing it in their office. So I have a wheelie desk. I didn't actually get to wheel my desk anywhere, but I'm also working with a programmer, John. Yet another John. Our team is now John, and Tom. But John Winder is our new programmer, and he's working there with me. And he didn't have a desk, so we got to go and get a desk from IT and wheel it into the elevator and do the whole Valve thing of a desk moving from one place to another.
Was it cool. Being followed by someone saying, "That's my desk, you jerks"?
We did have to just move multiple people around without their permission. And unplug their PCs without being able to shut them down or anything. Unsafe work or anything. This wasn't my decision. I was like,
Dota goes down.
Yeah, they'll be fine with it. It's cool.
How about you, Marsh? Do you have wheelie desks over at Mojang?
No, we have adjustable
Mojang?
height desks.
Mojang?
Well, there's some debate about
Mojang?
that. Because it's a pun on a Swedish word, which is actually mojang, which has the A but with an umlaut over it. But we don't have the umlaut. So there's some debate about whether it's actually an anglicised word or a made-up word rather than mojang, which means like doobry or gadget or what's it.
Okay, I didn't know
So
that.
you can pronounce it either way.
That's interesting.
But some people are very, very hardcore. This is Mojang,
Oh, really?
and you know,
Wow.
some people pronounce it.
Well, I suppose
It's really
otherwise you
boring
can't
trivia.
have Mojangsters.
No,
It would be Mojangsters. and that's
Mojangsters
less-
doesn't sound quite as good. Mojangsters, yeah. Anyway, yeah, no, it's good. It's good there. I'm working on Minecraft, which is a game everybody knows about. So, and then there's cool stuff as well, but you know, it's good.
I enjoyed the tile sets of recent times.
Yes. Yes, they went down very well. It's slightly weird predicting what people are going to latch onto and be obsessed about, because we'll release like a patch which has loads and loads of big gameplay updates, and there's all these kind of cool features, and there'll be complete silence about it relatively, and then you'll put llamas in the game, and people will just lose their fucking mind. It's great. I went to Minecon last year, and
Yeah.
there was literally like screams of adulation when we announced llamas on stage. People were getting up out of their seats and applauding, and it's like, okay, it's good. Did you like llamas? I guess that's cool.
I remember when I went to see Ghost Recon Wildlands at E3 2 years ago, so it wasn't playable, it was just like footage on a screen or whatever.
Do they have alpacas?
Well, they were talking about this, and then they were saying, I think they called them llamas. I don't know whether they were actually correct or not, but they just sort of said, and you can't ride the llamas, and that's all I wrote down through the entire session, and then did a sad face, and that's just my notebook from that day. So people care, Marsh. People really care.
They do. You can ride. No, can you ride the llamas? You can lead the llamas. Maybe you can ride the llamas.
Do you have llama saddles? That
Yeah,
would
you-
answer your question.
You can put rugs on the llamas, and you can customise the rugs so you can dress up your llamas.
you
Really
can
kind
have
of swish.
camels.
The camels aren't in the game yet. Maybe one day though.
Maybe one day. Aw.
Who knows?
I'd play again if there were camels, just saying.
Oh, okay.
If you could just put a word in.
I think camels would be hard because they got the humps and you've got quite limited resolution to sort of structure the shape of something in Minecraft.
Would it be
true.
just like one mini cube on its back? It's just like a horse with a cube.
Yeah, I can suggest the feature to Jens, who's the lead creative. He's a really nice man, and whenever I suggest features to him, he has this kind of... So he switches to his tolerance face. But, yeah, I think he gets requests quite a lot of the time, so we'll put that on the list.
Should
Next to
phrase
toilets
this
and
in
machine
person.
guns.
God. Next to. What are these camels going to be doing?
Yeah, well,
Anyway.
yeah, the reason we're all here is because of GDC.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's exciting to be here not as a journalist, because I literally get to go and just absorb stuff without having to write any of it down.
It was
I
your
do
first non-journo trip.
Well, other than Minecon, yeah, I guess so.
Awesome. I temporarily am a journalist.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to write about some talks on PC Gamer while I'm here.
Cool.
But what talks are you folks looking forward to?
There are a fair few on the esports day, which I believe is Tuesday, that I'm looking forward to. There's TL Taylor's talk, I think, about community, and I just really like pretty much everything that she and her organisation, Anykey, do. That's always super interesting. So I am looking forward to that. And also I think Tuesday is the board game design day. So, and just before we started, I was saying that I was excited about the I think there's one about the psychology of loss aversion in relation to board games, and that just sounded really potentially interesting. So I figured, like, that's got a big red circle around it. But yeah, and other things were just like a bit more that you would assume I would go to, like The Art of Abzu, which is hands down the best thing about that game.
Oh, I didn't see that in the calendar.
Yeah, I think that one's on the Friday, and then on Wednesday morning I think there's one about the art of Old Man's Journey. which is a really good-looking game. So yeah, like there's a fair few of those.
It's not the one that looks like it's drawn in chalk or pet crayon or something. They constantly.
No, that's the one that looks like it's got a similar art style to sort of old French sort of illustrations of children's storybooks, or
very like rich, warm colours, and it's kind of like
or like Dixit or something.
Hills going off into the horizon. And the sort of quirk of the game is you can walk from one hill to one that is crossing in the background.
Oh,
sort of jump into the
so
background
you
that
can
way.
like warp the terrain a bit and like bring hills up so that you can go to the one like behind it in the layering.
Is it going to PC?
Well, if it's not, I shouldn't have been writing about it on PS. So
I think it's the same guys who did like Secrets of Reticon, right?
I think so.
The bird carrying a boulder one.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
I think so. Like, I think I hadn't played any of their previous games when I looked, so might well because I haven't played that. But but the artwork for that is so lovely. So I figured I would go to that. I can send you my list if you'd like, because your ears have been pricking up with everything that I mentioned. How about you guys? What are you going to?
I'll go. I can't really remember any of the things I checked. I've gone to lots of story-based lectures, but I think there's a sort of post-mortem on Brigador, which is interesting. I think we covered it on the pod ages and ages ago because Jack Monahan, who's one of the lead developers on it, actually came to visit Bath, and we went out and hung around with him. He's a really nice guy, and the game is really cool. We played sort of like. I mean, it's sort of retro-looking, and it's all pre-rendered, isometric pixel art. But I think they use they can kit bash 3D models to produce the things that they then spit out as 2D sprites. But it looks amazing. Like the lighting in it is incredible, and they do all these kind of really cool tricks where, even though it's sprite-based, they somehow manage to render shadows that look like they're being produced by Fulsome models. Anyway, all that stuff is cool. But it's a great stompy, shooty. Isometric mech game where you're just fucking raising cityscapes basically, and it didn't sell at all. And one of the reasons I think it might have not sold is because it had a disastrous release strategy, which we said it's like, how should we sell this game? We're like, well, don't do the thing that you're going to do. And you're like, no, I think we'll do that anyway. And which was I think they kind of did a dual release, so they did a green light release, which. Okay. Got some kind of small amount of press, but then when it actually released fully, nobody then recovered it because they felt like it was old news. That's my speculation. But I'll be interested to see what other things happened during the process of that, because it does feel like that game should have got more attention than it did. I just think in terms of the sort of things that gamers generally are drawn to, or that game ticks a lot of the boxes, and it was pretty quiet on it.
I am looking forward to the Deus Ex postmortem Warren Spector is going to give. And I'm hopefully going to meet him this week because I'm part of a roundtable thing that he's also on. Never met him before. One of the creators of my favourite games.
Wow.
I had one of my most disastrous interviews as a journalist with Warren Spector. Have I told you this on the podcast before?
I don't think so.
What happened? I haven't heard it.
Well, I was there to cover Epic Mickey.
Okay.
I think it was the first one, and I can't remember. I think we started interviewing before I got to play it, but it was a really hostile interview. Like, I've never had somebody who instantly, obviously hated me. I don't know quite why, but I was occasionally I think, did it really go that badly? And then I look at the transcript again. I'm just like, wow. And the thing is, obviously in the transcript, I'm really fucking needling him as well, and I think he started out. Oh, so you write for Edge? Oh, yeah, they used to be good, or something like that.
Oh my god!
And it really went downhill. It was really kind of bitchy and snipey interview. And then I got to play the game in front of him, and the game was fucking broken. Like the 3D camera in it, as you were making one of the first jumps in the game, spins kind of like a weird number of degrees, and it wasn't clear to me whether the controls were then relative to your view or whether they remained the same. And so I kept on missing this jump, and it was like a really trivial jump. And he just got up and said, "I'm going to go for lunch." So he left.
Sick man.
It was pretty humiliating.
Wow.
So I don't know if he's a complete asshole or not, but I've met lots of people who've worked for him and say he's a lovely, lovely man. So, well, I don't know. Jury's out.
One of my worst interviews was also Deus Ex related, but it wasn't anything. Wasn't at all the fault of the interviewee. Sorry, it wasn't at all the fault of the interviewer. Me. It was Human Revolution and the first press trip for it, and they did. What I think is a really cool thing. Like they showed us the game, and then we had like a whole afternoon just interviewing all of the creative leads, like the lead artist, the lead sound designer, the lead game designer. That was kind of the problem. The game designer, director, and I think maybe creative director. And so there's like three of them where I don't really know what the differences between those roles are. And so, like weirdly, the sound designer, I did an interview about sound design with no prep time really, and that ended up going really well because we just kind of like it just ended up being a rambling conversation. But the game design one's like, I know things about this topic and I know what I want to ask, and then I asked it all of the first guy, and then I had some more to ask of the second guy, and then the third guy, I'm like, I don't know. I got to the point where I realised I've just asked the same question twice in a row. I just asked him exactly what I just asked him a minute ago. Because I couldn't remember, because I'd asked the same question to other people, and I couldn't remember if it was him or the last person.
Oh,
no. It wasn't like a disastrous interview, it was just really embarrassing. Because it looked like I wasn't paying attention, like I didn't care what he was saying, and actually it was just my brain was fried from doing very similar tasks 3 times in a row.
What's Spectre doing now?
His company is Other Side, I see in the GDC schedule, but that's all I know. Because wasn't he just lecturing until recently? Like, he's a full-time
Yeah, I
teaching.
think so. What are you covering for PC Gamer, or is that more just like up to you?
Yeah, it's going to be whatever takes my fancy as I go and see things. And it tends to be things that I go to stuff that I think probably journalists won't go to, like the AI Summit and things like that. So last year I read about a bug that they had when making Battlefield 2 where medics would all try and testing medic AI. If you knocked someone down, like took them out, then the medics would try and resurrect them, but they would all try at the same time. And so one set of defibrillators would resurrect the guy, and all the other sets would then kill him and resurrect him. And every time he fell, he would, like, the ragdoll would take him slightly downhill, and then he'd get up again. And so there's a massive, like, just 20 medics in a ball just endlessly electrocuting this one body as it goes down the hill.
Oh man, that sounds good. Maybe I should go to all of these AI talks.
AI is sort of like panning for gold. There's a whole load of technical stuff that just doesn't mean anything to you, and then every now and then they come up with an anecdote like that, and to them, like that's it doesn't sort of get a bigger reaction than all the other technical stuff they're talking about. But to me, it's like, that's amazing. You should tell everyone that.
I think I've marked some of the maths for programmers talks,
really?
Just because, like, not the super kind of hardcore stuff, but some of it sounds like, I'll give it a go and see whether I can follow it, and, because some of it just sounded interesting. I can't remember specific talks, but hopefully if they go well, I'll talk about them on the pod next week. Oh, unless I'm massively jet lagged and just never come back.
That would be some serious jet lag. I don't know if this was mentioned in the pod before, but the FTL guys announced their new game, Into the Breach, and they've shown a trailer of it. I've been playing an early version of that, and so I want to talk about it, but I don't think I can say anything about how it works other than what's been shown in the trailer. But what's been shown in the trailer is basically the format of the game, which is you have 3 mechs, and it's turn-based on a very small grid. I think it's 8x8, seen from like an isometric perspective, really lovely pixel art, and it's you're fighting like giant monsters who are trying to destroy a city, and a kaiju, and you are skyscraper-sized mechs, and it's turn-based, and which I might have already said. I can't remember. It's just like that terrible interview I had. But the unique thing about it, the 2 unique things about it, is one is that all of the attacks that the enemies are going to do are basically on the enemy turn. They can't actually damage anything. All they can do is prepare to attack things. So they rush over. You see like a scorpion thing move over to a building and prepare to attack it, and the building goes red. And then one of them will run over and like prepare to shoot at one of your mechs, and your mech will go red, and there'll be a line showing where they're going to shoot. But then none of it happens, and you have your whole turn to see what you're going to do about that. And so on the most basic level, like if they're attacking you, you can just move one square to the left, and now they're not attacking you. But if it's a ranged shot, it's going to go past you and it's going to hit something else. So if you're standing in front of a building, you don't want to move out of the way because it's worse for the building to get hit than for you to get hit. Like your mechs get repaired for free between every mission, and the buildings are what you really care about because that's like they're your power grid, and your power grid is like your persistent health bar throughout the whole thing. And so it's cool because that mechanic like drives you to be heroic. You end up like putting yourself in harm's way to prevent things. And it sounds like it would be too easy if enemies can literally never do anything without warning you first. You always have a turn to do it, but they can just keep ramping up the numbers until like you have 3 mechs. If there's 3 enemies all set to damage a building, then you better be in a position that all of your guys can get to one of them, and usually you can't kill them in one hit, so you have to figure out how to like push them out of the way. And that's the other unique thing is that it's all about pushing things around. Like almost all of the attacks of your first squad. I don't know if this is probably non-final, but the squad I played with, all of their attacks both damage and push in different ways. So like an artillery one damages the center square and pushes things away from all the adjacent squares. And then the various configurations of damage and push. And so sometimes you can kill something, but most of the time you're thinking, okay, I can't kill this, but as long as I hit him in this direction, he'll move over there. And then the most satisfying thing is if you can knock them so that instead of shooting this building, now they're lined up to shoot another enemy. And it's even better if they're going to do enough damage to kill that enemy. And it's even better if you use the preview to see the order of execution of their turn and see that, this guy that's going to get shot actually executes his turn after the guy who shoots him, which means when he dies, he won't shoot the thing he was going to shoot. So you can save like 2 things in one that way.
Feels like Rube Goldberg made a game.
Yeah, it's really it's all about chain reactions. I think that kind of works because I think it'll be very hard to set up in a more complicated game, but because it's on this 8x8 grid, there's only so many squares. So when you prevent an enemy from damaging something by moving him around, he's bound to hit something else.
So the 8x8 grid is static for each level. It doesn't scroll.
Yeah, no.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so it's very small arenas,
cool.
very short missions. Usually you have a turn limit of 4 or 3. And after that you win. Like you just have to prevent damage for that long. So sometimes like everything's gone to shit and all you can do is just like, we can't kill any of these things, but we can just push that one into the river and push that one over there and I'll just stand in front of this and take all the damage. Then you can get through it, and it's really compulsive to figure out, like pretty quickly you figure out how to do well at not taking too much building damage, and then it starts to become like, can I take no building damage? And then you start making sacrifices of like, well, I can do it, but this guy's going to die. When a mech dies, you still get the mech back, but the pilot inside is gone forever. And the pilots have like passive buffs and things.
Do you train them up then, or do you have a sort of allotted number that you have? And
yeah, they gain experience as you go through, and then there's a time travel element of bringing a pilot back. I can't 100% remember whether they explained how that works, so maybe I shouldn't say it.
It wasn't very obvious how it works from the trailer, but I know it's mentioned in the trailer, right? I think there was some kind of rewind thing.
I haven't seen the trailer. I was desperately trying to organise other things.
Yeah, it's cool. Those guys are so good at taking a complicated idea and breaking it down into really simple systems and making it things that you can grasp easily and things that, because they're simple, they're more satisfying to interact with. You can make such kind of clean decisions and strategies and things that just pan out really well. Yeah, amazingly, it's they haven't said how far, but they think it's a way off yet. Like I played it and thought, okay, you're going to release next week, but apparently they want to do a lot more to the content and stuff.
Sounds cool.
What have you folks been playing?
Anything? I've been playing Circles, actually, which the developer sent me a Steam key of because I was a bit confused by it from the demo that they put up online. So essentially it's a thing where you are in charge of a circle, which is your cursor on the screen, and then you move it around to try and get to another point on the screen, but in your way are a bunch of other circles that expand or contract or move around in response to your cursor movement. And so there's a demo online which has a few levels in and you can get the feel of it, but what I found that I couldn't really get from that was how difficult it might get and how it might escalate, or whether it was just going to be 90 levels of that level of difficulty, or, you know, any of that stuff. And so I'm really grateful that
presumably you can't touch these other circles that are in the way, right?
So you aren't supposed to touch any except for the one that you are aiming for. So sometimes it'll be that you have a sort of a maze pattern and you are moving sort of at a steady rate, and as you get close to some bits they'll expand and you'll know not to go that way, and then you'll guide it around.
So I was also confused by the trailer because I couldn't work out if things were reacting to you sort of dynamically and there might be multiple solutions, or whether it's like a hidden maze and just the closer you get to the walls, the more that the walls become obvious, basically.
So it's more, I think this is part of the problem. It's such a difficult thing to explain without you having the muscle experience of moving your hand around to actually see what the things are doing. So some of them are more like that maze element, and it feels a lot more like, oh, I'm just sort of figuring it out and sort of tracing out the shape of the world that it wants me to follow. And then others are like, oh, the circles will get smaller or small enough to pass alongside if you are moving your cursor slowly, or if you are moving it at a certain rate, or, you know, there's other things of like, if you are sort of going up on the screen, then they stay big, or, you know.
Oh, I see.
So there's lots of different effects that your movement can have, or the speed of your movement, or the direction of your movement. And so that is an element of it that gets more complicated as you progress. And then it also does things like, once you get to a certain point, you can then activate the more difficult versions of the previous levels. And so I played through like the first, I guess, world, and then you can go back to it and do it as it's the same puzzles, but they're also rotating at the same time. So things like that. And it's the sort of thing that I think some people will really enjoy and some people will really not. And I think I really enjoyed it, but then at some point I was like, and at this point it's not the sort of puzzle that I will enjoy banging my head against, because it's more about my reflexes than it is about necessarily always figuring stuff out. Like, some are still logic based, but then it becomes about like an actual dexterity thing, and I'm slightly, it's not Stephen's sausage roll at that point, you know. So yeah, but also there's just other like really clever things. So you'll be like, okay, I think I get this, you know, an element changes when I do a thing. But then like it suddenly switches to, oh, there are now puzzles where you have to move your cursor to the point that you'd think. But that creates a timeline. So I know this is so hard to explain. So essentially, it remembers that sequence of events and how the circles responded and how they changed during that. And then, so once you've done that part of it, it then has you start at a slightly different point to get to the second exit.
See, right.
And so you are trying to time your use of that second one to exploit the first one's like pathways that you set up. So genuinely, I really, really like it, and I hopefully will write a bit more about it on the site. But I did a supporter post just sort of explaining that it's really difficult when you've got a game that relies so much on how it feels to actually intuit what you do. To get anywhere with a trailer, or to, you know, even with a demo, like it's never going to explain how it unfurls.
It looks super pretty, which probably helps.
It is beautiful. It's very much like a kind of like one of those Society 6 print favourites. So I really, really like it, and I would say, because I was initially like, is it worth that much money? But I would say that I would have paid that having played it. It's one of those like in reverse things, which is so difficult to explain to people. Anyway, yes, so that's what I was doing.
That sounds good. Is it on PC then?
It is out on PC now, actually. So yeah, and I've been alternating between that and Cosmic Express, which is Alan Hazelden's game, which that isn't out yet, but I had a preview build of it, and
I might have to get in touch with him about that.
He's around this week, definitely do.
I played the first version of that, which I think he made for Train Jam last year, maybe.
Yeah,
really,
because it's a train game.
yeah.
And I think it was called Train Braining. Which is great. But
Yes,
I also see why he didn't go with that. And I think it's that version was the hardest of his games I've ever played, I think.
Really?
Just the first level felt like the last level of any of his games. It's just absolute. I don't see how this is ever possible.
I might ask him to send me that. That sounds like the sort of thing I'd enjoy.
He's making this one more approachable than that.
It's also so cute. It looks like these little space stations look like snow globes almost, like little cosmic snow globes, and it's just so adorable because it's him and Ben Davis, who was the guy that he worked with on Good Snowman, and the artist from the Klondike Collective. Yes, I think so. And so, yeah, it's just so pretty and also really difficult, and I love that.
So I assume the idea is that you need to trace like a point of entry to a point of exit with this train line, and you need to pick up people on the way and deposit them in certain places?
So you have a little train car and an entry point, and the train has a certain number of like spaces on it. I think I've only encountered 1, 2 and 3 sort of carriages. And then you have to guide it round a square grid to pick up passengers and drop them off in the right coloured stations. And so it starts off relatively straightforward, and then the difficulty ramps up, and also you get to certain points because it's arranged as like a series of constellations that you can like progress along. And so some of them have branching points, and so depending on where you can exit or where you take the now empty train car, you can actually access the different new levels. And some of them it's like you can see how to do it one way, but because you've seen how to do it one way, you can't see the other way because your brain refuses to reorient itself, and you're like, hang on. And then there's other things like you begin to encounter things like there's a green alien that is very cute, but it leaves its green goop on the train carriage, and so none of the other aliens will get in that one afterwards, so you can never pick it up first if you need that car for anyone else. So, but it's adorable. You should definitely see whether he can show you to play. But those are what I have been spending my time on.
I've only been spending my time playing games that I either am making or have been involved in tenuously. Mostly I've been playing Overwatch actually, which I haven't, but been involved in making it all. But when I haven't,
Overwatch, holy shit.
But I've been playing The Signal from Tolva, which is the game by Jim Rossignol and the rest of Big Robot.
Indeed.
I don't think much of what I did for the game is still in the game. I think I made some like UI icons that the descendants of still remain in the game, but otherwise it's completely devoid of anything, I think.
Because you did the menu assets and things for Sir You're Being Hunted.
I did the inventory items for Sir You're Being Hunted, and some promotional art and stuff, but yes, and the board game as well. But so it's sort of, The Signal from Tolva is... Jim's always been obsessed with Stalker as a sort of format for games. He really likes these kind of open world sim-ish games with lots of systems and lots of stuff just happening in the environment, like factions fighting each other. I think he just goes kind of spoogy for factions.
Spoogy.
And spoogy for factions, the Jim Rossignol story.
Another good pod title. But yes, it's sort of a robot stalker, but very, very, very mellow. It's extremely kind of pleasant to play, even though you're on this You play as some sort of Servitor robot, it seems, floating in orbit around this planet with some sort of mystery signal coming from it, and you can link your robot brain to, you can hack into, rather, robots on the surface, who then act as your remote body and your chassis. And when one of them's destroyed, you just kind of move your consciousness to another one, basically. But as you... the idea is that you kind of have to work secretly within the initial faction, doing missions for them, so that you gain rank, and then you can access sort of other aspects of that faction. And then there's a sort of territory acquisition thing where you're moving through this pseudo open world. Parts of it are locked off by environmental hazards that you need to kind of Metroidvania style upgrades in order to access. But then you get extra stuff like the ability to order around robots by zapping them with a little kind of laser thing and then pointing the laser elsewhere to make them go elsewhere. And it's really nice. I don't know how many hours I am into it, because I had to restart it at some point when a patch wiped my save. But from what I played, I imagine it escalates further, and there are probably more systems that I've yet to encounter. But at this stage, it seems to be mostly kind of just moving through the world, conquering little kind of bases full of robots, and
there's like outposts and not obelisks, but like artifacts, maybe it looked like.
Yeah, so there's things you can collect in the environment. Some of them seem to be mission based, and they allow you to upgrade your skills. And there's also sort of miniature puzzles within the collection of those. So again, I don't know whether this escalates, but one of the first items you collect in the game, it's inside this fallen spaceship of some sort, or maybe giant mech that has fallen apart. The landscape is littered with these broken remnants of spaceships, and there's like giant robot skulls that you can walk through the eyeball of and stuff. And this one, as you go into it, it sort of reconfigures itself invisibly as you walk around it. So it's a sort of maze thing. I think this was a puzzle that's also in one of the Stalker games, actually. It's very inspired by that sort of puzzle element, supernatural, semi-techno weirdness. Yeah, that's all I have to say about it, really. I don't know where it goes from that point.
The robots you're controlling, are they... I'm trying to figure out like what you are. Are you actually their overlord, or you said you hack them? Is it more like you don't have anything to do with them and you've just decided to invade?
Yeah, there's a surveyor faction, which is your initial kind of group that you get into. I don't know whether you get to jump factions later on. There are bandits, other robots, and there are people with zealots as well, who are also robots. They're all robots. But the initial faction, the surveyors, and you are not a surveyor, clearly, but you've hacked into them through nefarious means.
He's done quite a lot of like playthrough YouTube things, I think, because I remember I watched one about the outposts, which was interesting, and there was another one fairly recently about the how they translated the concept art to the art style for the game as it is now.
Yeah, the concept artist is a super amazing concept artist called McHugh.
Yeah.
Who's probably... you probably have seen his stuff.
I couldn't remember the first name, because I was going to say Ian McHugh, but then I'm like, no, I'm thinking of Ian McEwan at that point.
I think it is Ian McHugh.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Thank goodness for that.
But he worked for Rockstar for ages, so I imagine you've seen his art in those games.
But it's lovely. Like the stuff he did for Signal from Tolva is really lovely.
Well, it's very much in his style. So since leaving Rockstar, who's at Rockstar, he does a lot of robot drawings and. It's hard to exactly describe the style, but it feels like everything has been bashed together out of scrap metal, basically. And it looks very kind of, despite it being mecha and robotic, it also feels strangely organic, because these things have just been kind of accumulated in a haphazard way.
Yeah. And
they did quite an amazing job of turning that into 3D assets and animating it, I think.
Yeah, that was I think I wrote about that one because it was interesting to me how they'd actually done it, and like the brushes that they'd used based on the actual original artwork.
A lot of the textures have a sort of spattered, painterly feel to them as well.
Yeah, I really like the colour palette as well. Like it manages to be quite pastoral instead of the muddy side of that
Right.
palette.
Yeah, I mean, for being marooned on a desert world fighting robots, it's an extremely pleasant place to be, really.
Like an Arcadian version
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah, there's obviously some greater mystery to the game as well. You're picking up story fragments. Not all of them are in the game at the moment, so it's hard to speak to it. But between the patches, there have been more and more little story bits that you can pick up, and little fragments of previous robot missions there that give you a bit of detail and background of why people have crashed there and what they're looking for.
Does
and
it feel like... Oh, sorry.
Don't know. Well, there's mysterious figures who pop up on the horizon and disappear, rather like the G-Man out of Half-Life 2.
Okay. Does it feel like you're actually learning... Is it that they're adding the story in that you get more lore for the world and it fleshes it out? Or is it that you feel like you're getting closer to what the signal is?
Probably both. I mean, there's certainly some sort of direction that you're being pointed towards and some sort of end goal, but it's not quite clear what that is. But yeah. Interesting game. Yes. From which I will not financially benefit in any way.
just so you know. I've also been playing XCOM 2 again because, partly because I didn't bring my gaming PC with me to the States, so all I had was PS4, and so I was looking at things I can play on PS4, and XCOM 2 as well. And it's the early experience of that game. It's so much better the second time starting. Because the first time starting was a terrible experience. Just hated it. I died more on that first mission than I have on any XCOM mission in any XCOM game ever. And this time through, I just skipped the tutorial, which makes the game way easier, and also way quicker, and also doesn't have a terrible cutscene. And the game warns you about it 3 different times about, are you sure you're skipping a really good narrative experience that's going to totally ground you in the world and it's great even for experienced players? I'm fucking sure I played it, I didn't like it. So at first I was just like, my god, why have I not been playing XCOM all this time? It's just so I think it's the first, not so much the very first mission, but as soon as your people level up to squaddies and then they get randomly assigned a class, and then their first ability in that class is always basically the defining ability of that class. It's the really important thing. And then, so on the next mission after that, you get to use those abilities. And the first time you kind of realise, oh shit, my assault guy or ranger can actually kill this weakened alien, because even though they'd have to move twice to do it, they can still use their sword at the end of a double move. And then you do it, and it's really satisfying, because the thing XCOM 2 is especially great at is the actual execution of your plan. It always looks so good and always so punchy and cinematic and cool. But I also think that's related to the thing that ultimately makes it extremely frustrating for me, which is it's just incredibly unclear. And the further you get into it, the more this becomes a problem, and the higher the stakes get, because you're invested in your people now, and the enemies are more formidable towards the end. Or I don't know. There's a nice spot where your people have leveled up a bunch and the enemies you're facing are still pretty similar, and so now your guys are tough and you can afford a few mistakes. And then once the enemies ramp up, you get the ones that are just every now and then there's a jump up in the amount of damage they can do in one turn. And so I think I've only lost one person, and it was just because there's an enemy I knew would be able to hit me in that turn, but I just didn't remember that they do 12 damage instead of 4. And so he's just dead then. Okay, right.
Awkward. Oh dear.
And when the stakes are that high, that's also when the environments get more complex. There's multi-level buildings, and the things to do with whether you're concealed or not become crucial, and especially almost the most important thing in the game is just whether you aggro a pod or not, which is just, did you move far enough into the unknown that you got into sight range of a group of enemies, and if you did, they get to wake up and they get to take a bunch of moves without your input, and there's nothing you can do about it, and they will fight you next turn. And if you're already in the middle of a fight when that happens, it's a terrible, terrible thing, and you have no way of knowing where those pods are, and the only way to avoid triggering multiple ones is just to move incredibly slowly. And then the game obviously punishes you for doing that, because a lot of the objectives are time limited, and I like that in theory. Like I like the I like having a reason to move forward, to be aggressive and take risks and stuff, and I don't like playing incredibly cautiously. I don't like doing that thing where all but one person's going to go into Overwatch and then that one person takes 2 steps forwards and just cycling like that. But the reason that I want to do that, the reason that players do that, is that the whole game is about whether you triggered a pod or not, and there's almost no way to know whether you're going to do that except just random chance or going incredibly slowly. And there are scanning grenades they kind of use, but then once fights break out as well, the clarity just gets even worse, and multiple level buildings are so hard to see what's going on. There's also a whole lot of bugs to do with the save system where if you destroy a wall and then reload a save, the wall will either be back in place and really be back in place, or it'll seem like it's still destroyed. You can still see through it, but it is secretly there and it blocks vision and shots. And there's loads of stuff like that. And the only reason I'm ever loading a save game, normally I play I play spiritually in Iron Man mode, but I don't actually enable Iron Man mode because Iron Man mode prevents you from loading saves, and every time I load a save it's because the game completely fucked me with either a bug or such a huge visibility or readability issue that I wouldn't have done that if I'd known that this wouldn't work. There's things like, apparently there's an ability that one of your psionic guys has. What are they called? Psi troops, I think. Psi operatives. That it can give an extra action to one of your people, and I've had that person in my squad for about 15 missions, and I've used that ability multiple times, and I check on it pretty much every turn, and I still don't know what determines whether you can cast it on that guy or not. Sometimes they can only cast it on one person, and it's 3 of my people have taken their move and one of them hasn't, and I'm allowed to cast it on one of the ones who's already taken their move, but not the one who hasn't taken their move. And that person's further away than the other ones. And I'm like, it's not distance, it's not line of sight, it's not whether they've taken their own move. Is it some combination of those things? Does it just multiply 2 numbers together by the date? And then I just never figured out what that is. And there are other things there are so many little rules that you just have to know them. And the game does such a good job of making you care that when you lose someone because of those rules, or because just anything goes wrong, it generally doesn't get to the point that I actually lose someone before I reload the save because of a usability issue. But it's a game that snowballs in both directions, and so when something goes bad, everything's going to go bad, and then it'll just keep on going bad forever.
Maybe that's just life, Tom.
That is true.
Maybe these things that you're calling usability issues.
Life is also confusing. But if every now and then I do fuck up because of a tactical error, I do something and then, even just, revealing a pod accidentally, I don't reload because of that, because although I think it's unfair, it's not a usability issue. I knew it could happen when I made that move, so it's not fair to reload. But if it's something where it just literally, this guy takes 1 step closer to an enemy and now it doesn't have line of sight, even though there's just nothing else in the way, I'm like, well, I can't ever predict that, so I can't really play by those rules. But it makes me appreciate Into the Breach all the more, because when you reduce it down to 8x8 and that game is just all about clarity, everything is 100% clear all the time. You still have to learn the rules. There are still some things about what if I push this guy into that guy and there's a guy behind them, does the third guy take damage, whatever. But in general, even if it's just you're moving your mouse around and you're planning a move, it sort of animates what's going to happen. It shows, if this guy's going to get pushed, you see him get pushed. You see that, that's going to do 1 damage to this guy. And so there's so rarely any frustration when you actually commit your move, because you know what's going to happen in terms of your actions, and then the worst thing that can happen is the enemy plans a bunch of really difficult actions to counter.
I wonder if they would ever do a multiplayer version of it, as in, have you ever played Robo Rally? So it's a board game, and you sort of play it as if you are programming a thing. So you play different cards into movement slots, and it's turn left, move forward 2, all of that kind of stuff. And it all makes sense right up until everyone else plays and they're all doing their moves, and suddenly there's someone else in the way and they've pushed you, and now you're in a pit and you have to go elsewhere.
I see.
All your moves get really screwed up by everybody else, and then you get shot, and then this thing happens and that thing happens. And so I'm kind of wondering whether
Frozen Synapse sort of thing,
there would be a kind of a version of this where all of that like clarity is suddenly taken away. You have to like work out, or not work out, but like suddenly everyone else is a person who is able to respond to your things, and it just goes around in that loop of like, oh god, like why am I now over here?
Yeah, I played a board game called Cult Express recently.
Oh,
which
okay,
is,
yeah.
a similar thing where you queue up your actions. You all queue up your actions as secret, and then you play them out. But you're bandits on a train,
Yeah.
and the actions are things like go to the top floor, or go down one, or turn. You never turn, but the action will be like shoot, and then when you're planning it, you don't know where you're going to be at that point. And if someone punches you, you get knocked back, and if you punch someone else, you knock them back. And
You've
so
got an
if
actual
that happens
little train
unexpectedly,
as well. Like you
Yeah.
make the little train that you play on.
How cute.
So cute.
if that happens unexpectedly, you find yourself in a different position than you were when you expected to be when you played like the shoot card, and now you've got to shoot someone. And it's like, well, I did say I would shoot on this turn, so I've got to shoot in one direction or the other. And
Yeah. Or you think that you'll be on top of the train, and therefore your shot will go all the way like along and get
Yeah.
somebody on the final thing, but you've forgotten that you'll actually be sort of down below in the middle carriage. And you're like, oh, and like the ranger turns up, and you're like, hi. So
And you could also end up with a punching action queued, but there's just no one in the carriage with you, so just I punch impotently in the air. I don't know how the marriage of theme and mechanics came about there, because there's nothing about bandits on a train that makes me think they have to plan their actions in advance and they're committed to executing them regardless of situation.
isn't there one where like so you? I can't remember. Do you play them up, and then if you're technically going through a tunnel, you get to play them face down?
Yeah, so
Because that's where the mystery kind of comes in, isn't it?
yeah, I think you make a hand for yourself beforehand or something.
I really can't remember.
And then,
It's been a while.
yeah, I'm pretty sure you can kind of plan in secret, and then as you lay them down, they're usually public. But I was playing the ghost character, and his first card is always secret, so no one knows what I did first, which is great because that's the one that can totally change everything. If your first card was just to move to somewhere else, then
Yeah.
your subsequent shot is going to shoot someone everyone else is not expecting you to. Yeah, that's cool.
Did you guys want to talk about the things that you're working on, like Heat Signature or Rogue Process? I mean, obviously, if not, we can just exorcise this from the pod.
I'm happy to give Rogue Process a plug.
I just thought it would be interesting, because obviously it would be a good
Well,
update.
the voters on Greenlight will decide whether it's interesting. It's a game that I'm making with Mike Cook, who's probably been on the podcast a number of times. He's a very nice man. He's also an AI genius
Yeah.
of some kind. Not that he's artificially intelligent, but he makes artificial intelligence.
He's just intelligent.
He is.
Structured my over the process of years.
But yeah, so Rogue Process is sort of, I think, how did Alice describe it? I think she described it as gunpoint meet typing of the dead.
Yeah,
which is
or
not
Mavis
inaccurate.
Beacon.
Mavis Beacon, that's it, yeah. But it's somewhere between, I suppose it's gunpointy in that it has the same...
It's got windows.
It's got
There's
windows.
My property. Everything with the windows is gunpoint like.
And jumping. But it's also got a bit of Cannabolt to it. I think in its original jam form, it was going to be much more like Cannabolt, that you're going to be running across rooftops. But as it's been developed, Mike's ideas have also expanded. So now it's sort of about infiltrating high-tech corporations and hacking computers while avoiding security systems. And all of these things you do by going into a hacking mode and then typing very rapidly at the keyboard with all the words pop up above the hackable items. So you can hack a window which will allow you to smash through it easily. I don't know why that happens. Apparently that's cyberpunk. Or, hack a turret or a security camera and they'll go down. Or indeed hack actual individual computers, and then you can collect the data and then you get to buy more stuff with the illicit data that you've obtained. I'm terrible at it because I'm somebody who has to look at the keyboard while I'm typing. So it's a hard thing for me to QA. But
Yeah.
but yeah, it's been really fun making something for a game which is procedurally generated because all of the buildings need to be constructed out of little tiles, and so there's many different ways in which the tiles can fit together, which means you need to design things to be extremely reusable in ways which you might not expect, because an algorithm will put them next to something else which you didn't. So it's an interesting job trying to make stuff, because as an artist you want to have full control. And so, as the project's gone on, I've been kind of like, can we put in like chunks of rooms with pre-designed stuff? And Mike's gone, oh god, and then redesigned his entire algorithm to accommodate it because he's so nice.
This is a very different relationship than I have with John Roberts. So can we do this? No, sorry.
Yes, but it's interesting. It's a game I don't know where it's going to go because it's not been finished yet, and I think a lot of the process has been about putting it in front of people and getting their feedback, and then kind of massaging the systems based on that feedback. So it could completely change again in another 6 months, but we'll see.
Just an ongoing iteration.
Yeah.
I played a more recent build of it lately, and the addition that I hadn't seen before was you can now type to activate your abilities, and one of them is a taser type thing that electrocutes nearby people and sends them flying just with a ridiculous force.
It looks pretty good, actually. I have to say. I didn't design the special effects for that, but it's one of those things where it's obviously programmer art, but actually I think, oh no, you've done a good enough job. I don't
yeah, it's like a lightning bolt thing sort of art.
Yeah, it looks nice in slow motion as well. When you go into hacking mode, everything goes into slow mo, which looks pretty.
Yeah. I actually solved a puzzle with it where I don't know if this was sort of intentionally generated this way, but broke into a building and there was just like an overhanging office inside that was security level 3, and I didn't know how security levels work, so I didn't know how I would ever get the security level 3 to get up there. So the only stairs that led there were security level 3. But there's an executive up there, and I jumped below him and then used my taser to electrocute him through the floor, and he went flying so hard that he broke his own window, and then I was able to jump up through the broken window and get it.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's awesome. I just realised I have a game coming out, possibly the day we release this, or on the 3rd anyway. I'm releasing Morphlade,
yeah, that Friday, isn't it?
My side project that I've been working on. Sort of in my breaks from Heat Signature. I made it because I took a break from Heat Signature for about 6 weeks and wanted to sort of just think about something else. And turns out if you stop thinking about the game you're working on, or if you stop working on the game you're working on, you just think about it all the time. And if you're not actually working on it, that's just kind of frustrating. And the only thing I could do that would actually get my brain to think about something else was to make another game. And this was heavily inspired by Imbroglio, which is an iOS game by Michael Bro, where each tile you move to determines what weapon you attack with when you're there. And in Morphlade, it's a hex grid rather than a square grid, and you, instead of planning out a whole grid beforehand and designing that and then playing, you build it as you go. So you start with just 2 hexes and then you kill something, and by doing that you've earned another hex and you get to choose which side it goes on. And you're, at each stage, between each wave, you're kind of offered an array of possible hexes you can make, and they have both types and locations. And so, like, this one's going to be a blade, and it's on the top, and this one's going to be a healing hex, and it's on the bottom. And you move to it to decide that, yes, I want that one and not the others. And you build the grid that way. And you can, when the hexes earn enough sort of experience, like if you kill with one, it gets 1 point of experience, and when it gets 6, you can level it up. And when you level it up, you can upgrade it, and upgrading works by splicing it with a nearby hex. So if you have like a hammer next to a repair one and a blades one, then you choose whether you want to combine it with the hammer or the blades. And if you combine it with the blades, it's going to attack things to the sides as well as ahead. And if you combine it with the repair hex, it's going to heal things when it kills. And so, like, where you place these things determines not only like what attacks are available to you as you move around that space, but also what possible upgrades you'll be able to attach to those things, because you can only upgrade with adjacent things. So it's kind of about like planning out that grid and then trying to play on it, not just to survive, but to kill things in the right places and with the right weapons to upgrade the ones you care about to get the perks that you want by combining with the right things. And it can get ridiculous because you can upgrade anything with 6 different upgrades, and people have figured out, I've never done it successfully, but my testers assure me that the most effective strategy is teleporters, because you can upgrade a teleporter with a teleporter, and then it doesn't take a turn to teleport, so not only can you go anywhere, but the enemies can't move when you do, and then you can upgrade it to also kill the thing when you arrive, so you can teleport into enemies and kill them that way. Wow. You can make it knock back all the surrounding enemies as well. And
I imagine that's like the most fabulous entrance. You just teleport in, knock everyone back, and you're like, hello!
And no one sees it because time doesn't move. So yeah, it's a thing that just kind of, as I worked on it, it kind of I was ready to release it like in August, and I didn't because I went to Stugan, and I didn't want to release it like right as I went to work on Heating Showdown. And then I got less and less happy with it, and then kind of revamped it over the last few months, and made it into something that it actually seems worth selling. So it's going to be $5 on Steam, and it will be out probably by the time you hear this.
Cool.
Are you doing trailers and things?
I did make a 90-second explanation of it. That's not really like, it's still me talking over the game. It's basically just what I just said to you, but I'm playing it at the same time.
Cool.
Does it have any lore?
So I had to write tips, and until I wrote tips, there was no real text in the game, and so it didn't have like a voice, and I decided to make the tips extremely silly. So I'm not sure if it has a backstory, but I had to invent a character called Higson Morphblade III.
Good. That's it, isn't it, really?
Potting we can be
No,
asked
I
to do.
think that's... Yeah, gosh. You've probably got a party to attend.
I have at some point.
God.
But we're not going to do like questions or anything because we don't have any questions and ask for any. And,
No. Well, to be
this
fair,
might
I
not
asked
even
how
be-
you two were doing with your games.
Yeah,
so
you
I
asked us
think
questions.
that's
Good question.
Yeah.
You heard from the only real people who matter.
The dead.
I don't know, do we do a whole outro bit? Should we tell them
I
what to
mean,
say
we
on
can
questions?
do. It might be a disaster given, like, I can't remember it at the best of times, and you two have just, like, I mean, hang on. Let's see what we can do. You can find us on the internet at crateandcrowbar.com, and then if you go there, there's a link to our Discord thing where people will talk at you about stuff, and you can talk to them with them, not at them. Okay. And then at Crate and Crowbar is us on Twitter, and we don't have a Facebook, and I don't think there's a YouTube that I know the name of.
I think we do have YouTube.
Yeah, there is a YouTube channel.
I don't know the name of it. Is it Crate and Crowbar?
Yes.
It
Okay,
is.
fine. Yeah, no, go there as well. And is there more? Do we have more?
You can send us questions at questions@crateandcrowbar.com
Oh, yeah.
to have them not answered on pods like this.
That's true. And then us. We are on the internet. So where are you, Tom?
On Twitter, I'm at Pentadact, Pentadc.
Yeah, don't go to that one.
Pentadact.
And Marsh?
That's Marsh Davis. Davies.
Ooh. And I'm at Philippa War, which is PHILIPPAWARR. Is that a
I liked how you had to close your eyes to spell your own name.
I know, on the phone. I was like, yeah. Shall we do the mumble of leaving?
Let us do the mumble of leaving. That is the thing, everybody.
No.